Welcome to this video where I will describe for you the advanced scenario process. The increased gain compared to the ordinary scenario process is that the scenario group will develop a network for a number of specialists in areas that are important to their companies. Several ideas for innovation and new business opportunities will arise in the process. And finally, the result can be used on a daily basis as a risk management tool in the companies. But the advanced scenario process is also much more time consuming. Compared with the ordinary scenario process, there are three more phases here. In one phase, there will be an analysis of the connections between the various threats and opportunities. And there will also be a phase where experts they quantify the scenarios and make scenario dependent forecasts. And finally, there will be impact calculations where experts will calculate the development of the power system and pricing of the most important parameters. The scenario group goes through the same process as in the ordinary scenario process up to the point where the group has to select the threats and opportunities that defines the scenarios. Instead of choosing two threats and opportunities, the scenario group leaves the scenario board to experts and they analyze the connections between the threats and opportunities on the scenario board. In the next slide, I will show you how this can happen. I choose as an example the scenario work that the Danish electricity company Elsam carried out in the period 2001 to 2004. In this example, we had, among other things, two post-it with threats and opportunities that were about economical crisis and the economical school the society economy was based on. The correlations show that when there was an economical crisis, society changed the underlying economical theory. So the crisis in the 1930s changed the economical theory from Adam Smith to Keynes, and the crisis in 1970 changed the economical theory from Keynes to Friedman, and in 1990 there was a change from Friedman to new liberalism. Another important connection between threats and opportunities was the connection between fuel prices, environmental requirements, and electricity prices, which manifested themselves on the electricity market. In this figure, you can see the supply and demand curve here. Here we have hydropower plants and wind turbines. This is nuclear power plants. This is coal-fired units. This is gas-fired units and oil-fired units. In this case here, the intersection between the supply curve and the demand curve will give us a price here, a market price of 75 euros per megawatt hour. But if we increase coal prices, for instance, here, then it will be more expensive to produce on coal-fired units and prices will increase. So now the market price in this situation, the market price will be 90 euros per megawatt hour. Another example here is the interdependence between electricity prices and environmental requirements. Here we have the supply curve and demand curve again, and the market price here is 75 euros per megawatt hour. But if we put a larger requirement on the CO2 reduction in the power system, then CO2 prices will increase and the cost of producing on units that emit CO2 will increase. This you can see here, there is an increase in the production prices on the coal-fired unit and on the gas-fired and oil-fired unit here, and the intersection between the supply curve and demand curve is at a much higher level. So now the market price is 140 euros per megawatt hour. Imagine that the experts will find the relation between all the threats and opportunities on the scenario board. This, of course, is a very time-consuming work that has to be done here. In the case where we did the scenario work in Elsam, we found out that there were this financial crisis here that could affect all the other threats and opportunities on our scenario board. We then started discussing whether such a crisis were possible, and we had experts telling us that there were very large imbalances in society. For instance, here savings, they were historical low, and real house prices were high compared with price indices. There were therefore a number of indicators that indicated that an economical crisis was likely to appear. The connections between threats and opportunities and the description of a possible economical crisis were presented to the decision makers in Elsam. And they chose the economical crisis as being likely and the cause of important trend changes. Three scenarios were defined. All the scenarios start with a crisis, which is replaced by a long-lasting upswing. The three scenarios overcome the crisis in different ways, with a different depth of crisis and a time of turnaround. In scenario one, the crisis is handled without fundamental structural changes. In scenario two, the crisis creates nationalism and becomes deep. In scenario three, the crisis creates increased EU community and does not become so deep. We now come to the phase where the scenario story should be described. And again, I will use the example from the scenario process in Elsam year 2001 to 4. The three stories were written by story writing experts, and we did not use artificial intelligence. But today we would use artificial intelligence. Compared with the ordinary scenario process, there will now come a new phase where we quantify the scenarios. In the quantification process, we make forecasts for all important parameters. And we make a forecast for each scenario. What you can see here were the forecast we made for the growth in society in the three scenarios. And here is a forecast for coal prices in the three scenarios. And here you can see a forecast for oil prices in the three scenarios. Based on these forecasts, we now do model calculations of the development of the power system in the three scenarios. Here you can see the model that were used. We have indicators here, and we have some calculations done here, and we have output. In the calculations, we had this here was the consumption part, this was the production part, and here you had the intersection, found the intersection between supply and demand curve, and also which kind of power units that would be profitable in the future. So the output here would be a capacity expansion and electricity prices. The result is shown here in this figure where you can see how much capacity that is built in the different time periods here. And the capacities here, they are divided in new wind, new gas turbines, new coal, life extension of old coal-fired units and gas-fired units. And this figure here shows the production and demand in this for in the Nordic countries in scenario one. This of course would be different in scenario two and in scenario three. And here you can see the electricity prices, which were very important when we had to decide whether or not to build new power capacity in scenario one. We also had such a figure here for scenario two and scenario three. The quantification and the results of the model calculations, they were written into the scenarios. The result of the advanced scenario process can be used in the same way as the ordinary scenario process in order to get give you more robust and flexible strategies. But here, when you do the advanced scenario process, you can also apply that as risk management. The analysts, they follow the key figures that determines the probability distribution between the scenarios. And the existing portfolio is assessed based on the scenarios and their current probability. Investment in new facilities is made robust and flexible based on these scenarios. The final investment decision for new production units is decided on the basis of the economies of the scenarios weighted by the probability of the scenarios. I will now sum up the advanced scenario process. On the first day, the scenario group will hear the history of the infrastructure, and they will be presented of the actual plans for further development of the infrastructure. And then they will describe threats and opportunities, and they will collect these threats and opportunities on the scenario board. On the second day, they will group threats and possibilities, and then they will structure this on the scenario board. On the third day, they will discuss how much they can influence the different threats and opportunities. And then they will select experts to find the relation between the various threats and opportunities. On the fourth day, they will get the results from the experts, and they will also choose the most important threats and opportunities that will define the scenarios. And then they will select experts that should quantify the scenarios. On the fifth day, the experts, they will present their quantification, and the quantification will be discussed in the scenario group. And the scenario group will have a meeting with other experts who will comment on the quantification. Now the scenario group will select the experts that are going to make plans for each development plans for each of the scenarios and calculate prices corresponding to these developments. On the sixth day, the last day in the scenario process, the expert will present the development of the infrastructure and the key figures in the various scenarios. The scenario group will discuss this presentation and adjust some minor things, and the result of this quantification will be written into the scenarios. And finally, the scenario group will evaluate the process.